You can follow me on any of the listed social media, and you can read my manga over on Pixiv. If you'd like to support me, then please consider subbing to my Patreon. Thank you. We're good to go. So, I didn't end up, like, correcting or really changing anything in the background. All I did is I added that, sort of sandy dust, like I talked about. So it kind of helped hide the imperfections of my rendering techniques for the rocks. So when I can render rocks really nicely, then I will not have to hide them. But for right now, I feel like they were actively taking away from the piece. And now that they're hidden, it's just a little less noticeable, a little less egregious. I still don't think it's great, but you know, it is what it is. Like I said, I don't practice rocks enough, and I'm going to add it to the list. I need to get better at it. I need to stop just accepting the fact that I don't have a good rendering method for it, because it's obviously easy enough to learn how to figure out. So I need to do that. I will do that later. For right now, though, we will finally begin rendering Dehya. So, I am just going to start with my shadow, or my sort of light shadow layer. And again, I'm going to be, well, I guess, I don't know why I'm saying it again. I mean, obviously, actually, do I have a rendering tutorial yet? I think I have a rendering tutorial out. I don't know, but at least for the way in which I render my characters, I start with just kind of my large brush. Very generous with the shadows here, because, I mean, obviously we can fight these back with her other base color and stuff like that. So, we'll do a bit of a, you know, this will be a lot different once it's done. So right now we just want to use a larger brush, so that way it kind of self-blends. You know, if we go real small and try to do all this, it's just going to end up, you know, like that, and it's going to look horrible. So we'll use a smaller brush for, like, detail work, stuff like that. You know, like areas in the eyes or, like, a little bit under the nose and stuff. But for right now, we're just going to use a larger brush. Then I'm going to come in here with her base color and just kind of fight back that initial shadow layer in areas that don't super need it. Now this area right here is completely shaded, so we don't want to add too much there. We'll brighten this little spot up a little bit. Same with this, like so. From there, we'll now grab a slightly brighter color and just kind of poke that into the areas closest to our light source, which we have just kind of a neutral light. It's kind of above her, just slightly off to the right, and we can tell that by the little shadows we cast. Obviously, you could have the lighting wherever you want, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. And if it helps you, especially if you're just starting out, it might be better in the long run to just like actually draw in on a layer that you'll eventually hide just where your light source is, just so you can keep it in mind as you're working on your piece. As you go and you do it long enough, you can just kind of keep in the back of your mind where your light source is and go from there. But definitely when I was first starting out, it was a lot more helpful to me to just draw where my light source was, so I could keep it in mind. But there is something on some of my sorry, I'm having a lot of voice cracks all of a sudden. I think it's a stupid cough. I'm trying to talk quiet so I don't cough every 4 seconds, but when I talk quietly, my voice just cuts in and out. I don't really know why. I'm just, for whatever reason, I was designed to speak at full capacity and just shout every word. Is what it is. But anyways, like I was saying, I will in some future projects have a little bit more deep lighting and some more aggressive lighting and shading and stuff, so I'm excited about that because I've been practicing in some of my free time and stuff. But for right now, I'm just sticking with my relatively basic method of rendering right now. So it's nothing too fancy. It's really simple. It uses a lot of the simple brushes and stuff. Pretty easy to replicate, but this is kind of a method that I've been working on, because when I'm working on like my manga and stuff, I I don't want it to take me like 10 hours just to render a page by using the craziest, you know, deepest methods possible. So I really, you know, I'm trying to just master a simple technique that will look good in a finished piece, but can be done relatively quickly. I've made changes and updates as time has gone on, for sure. So I've made it a little bit better. I've added a couple more layers to it. Made it just a little bit more stylized, a little bit deeper, but for the most part, it's still relatively simple, and I think it's good. I swear I already have a rendering tutorial, but if not, I'll make one just to help like a beginner artist with it. If you're like intermediate or beyond, then yeah, it's probably a little too simple for you to really concern yourself with. But if you're a beginner, it's a good way to have a pretty good introductory sort of method of rendering. You know, it's got plenty of moving pieces, lots still to keep in mind, but you won't get overwhelmed by, you know, tons and tons of different types of layers and things like that. It's relatively simple. I also have a pretty simple way now of making like my little lip gloss there. The more and more I have rendered faces and stuff, the more I find that the less detail I put into it, and the less sort of differentiating colors and stuff like that, just the more simple I keep it, I just find it looks better in the finished product. So I keep the lip gloss super simple now. Literally just kind of airbrush a pink color in and then soften it. So it's pretty easy. Guess we could add a little bit right here, a little shadow in the nose. So I'm just doing the hard shadows right now and trying to keep it minimal, because again, I kind of want her to just have a rather, you know, neutral lighting. I don't really want to go out of my way to make anything intense here. So just adding it in little pieces where it could use it, like here in the ear. There we go. And then for this, I'm just gonna add it all right here. What the heck? What is this? Why is it on a different layer? It's on this layer. Interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna grab that, delete that, and then come here, do that. There we go. Perfect. So now what I can do though is I can just change this from a multiplier layer back to a normal layer, select the exact color I used, and then flip it back to multiply, because I don't want my shadows to be different color values, because then it's going to look off. And then this part here doesn't need a whole lot of hard shadows, because this is like ripped cloth material. This one will add a little bit right there. But again, I guess this part could have a little bit of a shadow to it. Just a little. And be fine. Especially if my light source is slightly off to her right, so it'd help indicate that. Soften some of my shadows a little bit. Do this. Like that. I don't know how much of like a shine I really want to add to her leg, or to just her in general. But we'll add just little tiny, little teeny light spots here. Like that. I don't want anything too fancy here. Keep it simple. But something like that. Perfect. Okay, what else do I want to do? I guess I do want to do this. I've been adding like a little redness to my character's ears now. I think it looks nice because ears are kind of naturally a little more red because a lot of the blood vessels are just closer to the skin there. I've been doing that with the thighs too, although I feel like I feel like this thigh has so much detail over it, make it look messy, so I think I'll just save it for her other thigh. I'll put like a little touch of like blush on it. Which I guess we're doing right now, so perfect. So now what I do is I'll grab like her base color, and then I'll come down here and grab our shadow, and I do that just to make sure that the change from the base color to our shadow is noticeable enough, because every now and then it can be easy to just grab like the very edge of it or something, or maybe you just shade it a little bit softer there so it's not quite the same value you used, because we're trying to get the same sorry, excuse me, trying to get the same look. Obviously we don't want her to just look different. So now again, I'm being super ultra generous with my shade here, so like 90% of it's going to get beaten back, but I'm just trying to add this initial base shade. And we'll grab her shoulder, and then on a new layer, so now I've got the base color. I'm just going to poke that in to areas that don't need to be shaded. So I'll even go a little bit smaller here, grab this, like so. Same with her collar. Just keep it light, like this. This right here, something like that. There we go. Then click that, just make sure, again, I just do that just to make sure I've, covering all my bases, that I've got the right areas, and that I'm not missing anything. So now we'll grab a slightly lighter color, just right here, right there. Just areas that are really catching the light, can have a little bit of an extra highlight to them. And then I'm going to add a tiny bit of a blush for our darker skinned characters. We definitely want to use a bit of a darker red here, and just add ever so slightly this little blush there, a little on her shoulder too. There we go. From there, I'll go ahead and add in our little highlight color, so super bright, make it a little bit bigger, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there. Have a little bit extra here on this thigh, and really just soften it so it's not jarring. Like this. There we go. Then I can add in our hard shadow with the multiply layer and do this. Right there. We'll get a significant portion here of her neck area, just because again we're looking down on her. I guess down at her. So her head is kind of like over everything, so we'll help show that by having a large shadow cast by her chin, or by her jaw. Do that. Little shadow here. I like to just add just the tiniest bit in this little collar dip that I like to indicate. Oops, then a little bit in between the chest. Like so. Have the littlest bit where the chest is kind of spilling out over the material here. And then same like this. Just trying to indicate that. Same here. A little bit like that. A little bit like so. And then this can all be shaded there. And then I'm just going to shade all of this to make it simpler on myself. Then we'll lighten these so they're not quite so drastic. There we go. Oops, I forgot her thigh. So we'll add a little bit like so. A little bit up in here. But yeah, I'm excited. I've been thinking about it because obviously I'm trying to do the best I can on these videos, and I realize I'm not always the best at thinking of interesting things to say while I'm working on stuff like this. The tutorials I'm not like amazing at those either. I definitely need to practice not being like robotic and stuff like that when I'm going through things, but I think what I'm going to do is because I can't justify just spamming my YouTube channel with tutorial after tutorial after tutorial or commentary after commentary, because I don't frankly have enough time to do that. So I'm not going to do that, but I think what I'm going to start doing is I'll make a second channel where I will very infrequently upload like video game content. And my goal for that is not to like go out of my way to try to make a large channel from it or try to grow that channel out the wazoo, but it's just I would like to use that as a way to just be able to clip some of the stuff I'm doing in there, practice talking over the content, practice coming up with interesting things to say on the fly, because it is just a skill set that it just takes a lot of practice, you know, especially when I'm doing technical things like drawing and stuff. It can be easier to just really focus on what I'm doing and then catch myself just not really saying much of anything, or vice versa, where I'm just yapping and not really paying attention to what I'm up to. So, but I think with the game content, keeping it super light, keeping it super loose, and not really having an upload schedule to try to keep up with, it'll just give me some better practice, and I'll be able to edit those videos and practice that as well, because I'd like to get a bit better at editing so I can make a little bit more enjoyable content for all of you to watch. So, lots of things coming down the pike. Again, I still have that big project that I'm not announcing quite yet, but I'm working on it already, and I'm excited for that. A lot of it's going to be put up on YouTube, so you guys can watch it as well. But yeah, right now I'm keeping the short material here like pretty simple, because I don't need to add all of that shadow. Just like that. But yeah, I'm keeping her shorts here pretty simple. Right now I'm just working on the hard shadows. Just trying to think, because her chest is going to be casting a shadow down here, somewhere in here. So just trying to figure out where that would be. Probably like that. And then we'll have shadows from all of these belts. Just little tiny ones though. We don't want to overdo it here. And then same here, just super tiny ones. Then we'll follow this little shadow that we had established earlier, along with some marks like that. And then just the tiniest little guy right there. So here we go. Kind of soften this so it's not quite so dark. Oops, didn't need to soften that. Okay, let's see. From there, looks like it's his boot. So her boot has a little bit more of a gloss to it, it looks like. So I'm just going to go back down here. And like normal, start with my base shadow. So I'll do this, grab here, and then instead of just going straight to a base color, I'm just going to use a relatively bright color there, and then I'll brighten it even further in a smaller spot like this, and kind of bring that up like so, and that will kind of help give us that slight gloss finish. And then we'll add just a highlight here, soften it, and we'll add in our hard shadows. So, like so. There we go. Then soften that a little bit. There we go. Finally have some coffee in me. Feeling a bit more alive now. I think I've recorded, this be my second part of this video I've recorded today, but I had to take a break because like the first one I did, I was so tired during it. It's like, dude, I just don't feel like drawing right now. So took my lunch, drinking some coffee, feeling a bit better now. which is nice. And I feel like my lungs are feeling a little bit better now too, so I'm not coughing quite as much. But yeah, nothing seems to ever go according to plan. So like I'd already mentioned, I was planning on doing these videos quite a while ago, but I just could not do it. I ended up getting sick right when I was planning on making these, and it just ruined everything. And also, I added the shade there because I realized I did not take into account the shadow here cast by her chest. So we're just going to delete all of these shadows here, and then try to figure this out. Probably be something like that. We'll see. We'll just have to adjust as we go. And then we can redo these ones. These ones were fine, but I think this one might just need to come out a little bit more. There we go. We'll call that good. But yeah, usually if I have to redo a shadow somewhere, I'll just everything in that area I'll just redo. Otherwise, you just run the risk of when you go in to soften it, you can't soften the shadow you redid enough, and then you're like erasing your other shadows, you know, because you don't want to use a small eraser because then you're not going to really soften it. You're just going to take chunks out of it, and that's not good, obviously. So now we will add in our base shadow, and again, I'm gonna go so generous. I'm just gonna basically add shadow to the entire leg here, and then hide that, and then this time I will grab the base color and just pop that into these little areas poking out. So the calf, the knee, a little bit on the foot here, like up in this toe, and a little bit up on the heel. So now I can go grab this bright color and then add that here, and then a little bit here. And again, this is kind of working more so like a highlighter, so we don't want to go overboard. Then we'll grab this, bring it up a little bit. You can even bring this into the shadows. No big deal. Same over here. And then a little bit here on our heel. And then we'll just soften it as it kind of goes towards the darker parts of our leg here. And then, let's see, probably soften up some of this around these areas because I don't want it to be quite a jarring shift. I kind of want it to blend a little bit better. And then from there, we'll grab a highlight color like this, just super bright. Bring it up in these little areas here, just barely poking through. Same with the heel. Well, we can kind of bring this down a little bit too, like that. There we go. Now add our hard shadows. So let's see. We've got to follow the leg here into our boot. And all this armor stuff is kind of hanging off, so it's going to give it kind of a unique shape here. We don't want the shadow to just come right up to it because this is casting a shadow. So you want to leave it a little bit underneath to help imply that. We'll put this here, like so. Then I'll just use my paint bucket tool right there. And just kind of match this to the little leg bumps that we've got going on here. This, add that right there. And then add a little bit in the knee here. A little bit coming up into the calf. Like so. All of this can get shaded. Honestly, same as this. Do that. There we go, kind of into this toe area. There we go. Then we can soften. And then the last little detail I'll do is I'll add a brighter color to this little fold here. I don't want to go overboard, so just a little tiny one, just to let it show that the material's kind of wrinkling up. So I'll do that. And again, checking to make sure that I'm not missing anything. I think I will soften. It's not that much, but I'll soften these a little bit further. There we go. Now it looks like we're onto the belts. So I'll do this. And I'll give the belts kind of that same sort of gloss. But first we will be very generous with our shadows. And I'll just shade that entire part there. Because then we can grab the base color from this one. And just kind of fight back our shadow a little bit. Just so it kind of blends itself. Then we'll grab this highlight color. And it's right here where the belts are closest to our light source. Just do that. Areas where they're not going to get hit by anything. And then what I like to do is come to my hard shadow, grab our highlight, and we'll just kind of scratch it in. Like this. Same here, kind of following the grain of like where the leather would be. So that's why I'm not doing it like this. I'm just kind of following the shape of our belt. Do that here. I'll grab my little clothing blur brush that I've got. Do that like this. There we go. Okay. Then I'll just soften this up a little bit so it's not quite so abrupt. Then under that, I think I will add a blue color dodge layer. Go nice and light. And just add the tiniest hue of blue. In fact, I like that enough to where I'm going to do that same thing over here on the bright portions for like boot things. And then same with the other one. I think it's just this layer. Yeah. Alright, so I'll add another color dodge layer. A little bit. Just adds a little bit of a pop of color. And again, because we used like an off color for it, that blue pops through better. Because if we just went full gray, you're just not gonna get that look. You know? So again, I really recommend if you're doing dark colors or grays, or blacks, grays, whites, whatever it might be, if you're using those types of colors, use an off version of it. If you're going like a white, you could either go super like a super light blue kind of in this area, or you could even come up into here into the yellows and oranges for kind of a more creamy sort of color. But if you do that, you'll have a lot more space to work with using interesting lighting, and even like using pure white as like a highlight, and that can help elevate it too. Because if you just go pure white, you're just limiting what you can do in the rendering with your colors. So try to use off colors. It will make a big difference in the finished product. Especially if you find that you want to highlight something with a color, like for example, if she's sitting beside a fire, then we're going to want to add that kind of orange-red hue to her in certain parts where the light would be hitting. And if you're using pure white, that's just not going to show through. It's going to show up as more white if you're using like a color dodge or a glow or something. So really recommend just using it off color. You will save yourself a lot of heartache doing that. So in the reference image, these aren't like the glossiest things I've ever seen, but it's part of her boot, so I'm just going to make it glossy. So we'll add a little bit there, a little bit there, and then kind of blur it like so. Then we'll add multiply layer, and then grab this, swing through here, and then I need to grab our base. Super tiny, there's 1 pixel missed here, and then 1 right beneath it here, so grab this. There we go. Okay. From there, okay, so it looks like we've got some belts. So again, I grab the base color first, grab the shadow. I can see that my thing moved what seems like a good amount, so I should have the exact color I want. Put this on my belt here, here, and I think it's just, yeah, this other belt. So I'm just gonna shade that entire thing. Then I'll just hide that layer to make sure I can grab the actual base color, and then just pop in a little bit there, a little bit here. So you would just go with, oh yeah, our light. So a little bit brighter here. Brighten this spot up a little bit. Not gonna brighten that one up, but we'll still add this sort of like gloss to that other one too. We'll just do this, like so. And then we'll just add like a little tiny one here. We don't need anything crazy. And then again, just kind of blur it in some areas. The whole thing doesn't need to be blurred because we still want it to be visible. Because again, like I've talked about this a couple of times, but there's a couple of areas where it's okay to have some soft spots, but don't forget having some hard, definitive lines as well, because that can make it a little bit more interesting to work on. Like I'll probably even go back to the shadow underneath her, because some of these parts I like I like this section here, so I want to go through to this, which is just boring, and go through and add a little bit more of that sort of airbrushed effect, so that there's some hard definitive lines, but then there's some parts where it's just kind of broken up and blended. That'll make it look a lot more natural when it's done like this, because this right here looks pretty good to me. I like that there's some airbrush effects and then there's some definitive shadows poking out from inside. So I will definitely adjust that shadow down there and make it a lot better. But now we can add our color dodge. Grab this, grab a neutral, well, not neutral, it's a pretty saturated blue, but add like just the tiniest little poke of that, like so. Then multiply, and again trying to follow this line here that we established for our chest. Do something like that. There we go. Again, I gotta do that here. Oh, in fact, I didn't even add shadows. Interesting. Learn something new every day. So we will add our shadows now, like so. Just trying to figure out the exact position I want for it. So we want it to blend, but we also got to remember that these belts are not on the same exact level as the rest of her leg, just because she's got parts of the leg kind of bubbling out past it, so it's not going to just be a perfect, you know, straight line across everything. It's going to have some changes in it. And then this one looks like this shadow just isn't really present on the rest of her leg there, so we'll just do that. That should be those ones, and then just need to add a little bit of shadow right here. And again, I've got a pixel that I gotta color in. yeah, the paint bucket's nice. It's just every now and then it just misses like 1 pixel, and it's so annoying every time it does. Because sometimes you're not going to be able to see it unless you zoom way in like that. Like, obviously, when I'm out here, I can't see a pixel that's missing, but it still looks better when it's, you know, in there properly. So, we'll do that, and then keep moving. Trying to move kind of fast here because I'm hoping to get the rendering done across 2 videos. So it's one of those things where there's enough to render that if I don't really keep myself on task here, then I'm just going to end up needing like a 3rd video for the rendering, which at this point it's already like a 9-part video, and I'm not trying to make it a 10-part because that's just kind of crazy. Especially because it's like I was planning on doing this like in place of one of my tutorial videos, so it's like, oh, you know, once a week we'll watch a part with Dehya. But now at this point, it's like, do I really want to dedicate 10 weeks to something that, you know, I'm not really confident that there's going to be a huge audience for this, because it's just ended up a little bit big. Kind of out of practice, too, for talking while I'm working on it. So I don't necessarily think the quality is so insane that people are going to watch it, even if they're not super interested, you know? So think what I'll do is I'll just in tandem with my other videos just upload my little Dehya parts, so not at the same time obviously, but it's just during the same week. So because even if I do that or I just do double uploads, it's still like 5 weeks worth darn near of content that I don't gotta worry about, which that I'm okay with. So I'll figure it out. I might even make it so it's not like on a set schedule. It might just be some weeks there'll be 2 parts in 1 week, other weeks there'll be just the one. We'll see. So I'm just going to add this highlight here. I'm going to do this. There we go. Then I'm going to add the full little gloss effect here. Like that. I do think we'll go ahead and take this and have a bit more of a defined edge in some places. Like so. Looks a little bit nicer. And then we'll take our multiply layer. Have just the tiniest bit there. And then just kind of this little guy. Okay. So just going to verify that that was the only base color there, which it was. So we will move on to the next part here. So again, I just like flicking those on and off because it'll catch my eye if I miss something. Helps you just figure out what layers have what colors on it. So we'll do that. Looks like those. So I'll just finish with this boot over here. Grab our bright color, like so. Do this here. Oops, needed to grab a super bright color. There we go. Now multiply layer, get some hard shadows. Doesn't need a ton over here. Just a little bit here and there. There we go. Okay, and then I did forget my little blue hue here. I'll grab this. Just to add a little pop of color. Same with this other boot. Just kind of erase that a little bit because I don't want it to be an extreme. It's like because their boots aren't blue. It's just I want to add a little bit of color to them. Okay, then these belts here. So these ones don't look super glossy in her in the reference photo I've got of her, but because it's a belt and it's the same color of her pants, I'm just gonna add a gloss just to make sure it's noticeable that this isn't just the same exact material of the pants or as the pants. So I'll do this. So already using a little bit more of like a red hue there. That'll kind of help signify that. That's the similar color, but it's a completely different material. Then again, I'll scratch this in. And then some big ones here, like right at the edge. And in some areas, blur it. Like so. Then I can, even though this is going to all be darkened, I can still add this sort of gloss look. And then multiply layer, grab this, nice and large here. And then we'll shrink it back down and get some of these little details. So do that, soften that. Actually, don't soften it yet. I'm gonna fill this in like that. Then you put this in here, relatively small. There we go. Now we can soften. Perfect. Okay. Let's see. So it looks like now we're just kind of continuing this section with another belt. So what I will do first though is these little parts here. I'm just gonna grab our darkest color on the boot and add that here. Because then, you know, because this is just supposed to be a dark shadow, you know, it's just there's no light really catching that, so it's just going to be whatever our darkest area ended up being on our boot, we just will match it to, so we'll do that. And then add a generous little shadow here. This looks like it's the same color as this belt, so we'll just do them all at the same time. So I'm going to fully shade this one, and then on a new layer I will grab the base color and poke it in where needed, like so, and then do that to beat this little shadow back, and then a relatively bright spot here, like so. Now I'll do the same just to kind of highlight the rim of the belt here. Nothing too intense though. And then I'll probably just add a little bit of that color here just to help texture it. Then again, use like a little gloss. A little bit here. Add kind of like a something like that, and then again following the sort of grain of the leather here, sketch these in like so. Now I use my little blur tool here, do that. There we go. Perfect. Now we will shade with a hard shadow. There we go. So I'll do this. And not all of this needs to have insane shading on it. This part here, because it's got a shadow cast on it from her chest, it'll have a little bit more there. But for the most part, I'm trying to keep the hard shadows lacking. Do I want all those shaded? Probably not. So I think we'll just go nice and small here, just right in the little tips of these openings. Oops, add like a little bit. Just something like that. And soften. Then this can just all be shaded back here. Just completely covered up. And that's already softened. Perfect. Okay, so what else is on this layer? Nothing. Okay. Okay, so we're almost done with her lower body then. We'll keep chugging along. I don't know what a great stopping point will be. We're already almost at 50 minutes, so probably gonna have to cut this off shortly. But I know the gold is gonna take some doing. The gold is gonna be a heave to get through, so that is my only concern. Is if I cut this one off too soon, then the final video is just gonna be super long. But I also don't want this one to run on longer than it really needs to. But I think we'll definitely try to get through. Well, we'll definitely get through her lower body because this is like the last layer of the lower body. But then after that, probably try to get through some of her upper body. Because if we don't, then again, we're just going into the next portion with her entire upper body as well as the gold, which is going to be an undertaking to get it to look right. Especially because she's got so much of it. I did not know that until I started drawing Dehya, but she is covered in gold. Oh yeah, shoot, I also gotta add the little pyro thing here. So I'm gonna have to look that up. I'll probably just look up a picture of that and drop it in before I do the final part of the video. Just because it's not going to be that interesting, and I'll just show it when it's done. I'll do this here, add a little shadow there. And then I do know that this appears to be a little bit more orange in the finished piece, so I'll just add a color dodge layer here, brighten it a little bit, and then beneath that color dodge layer, I'll just add a little bit of orange. There we go. So now it's got a little tiny orange hue to it, nothing too extreme. So we'll go with that. Okay, then, am I missing anything else from down here? It doesn't look like it. Yeah, because it has its shadow. Perfect. So now, looks like it's just this strap. Okay, so we can finish the top, that little arm piece. I think we'll try to finish some of these clothing pieces then. I think then that would probably be a good stopping spot, because I also don't want the final video to be like 10 minutes. So, you know, I don't want to just save the gold for it, obviously. So I will do this, grab a light color here, and go relatively large like that. Now we can add in the wrinkles and folds. So just with a brighter color kind of following this. And then adding in these long wrinkles here. so. And then I will use my little soft pressure eraser and kind of fight some of these folds back. Just to make sure they're not too exaggerated. Something like that. And then we can do the same over here, just with some little folds like this, and then some little ones coming from down here. Kind of following the curvature of the chest here. Oops. I was wondering why that was not erasing. I grabbed the wrong tool. Do this. So, just basically making sure that these little folds aren't too extreme. And then we'll take our clothing blur tool. And not on every part of this, but on some of it, we'll kind of fan out these folds. So I'm not just going straight, I'm kind of opening them up at the edge. Like so. We can go a little bit smaller here. And then grab my actual softening eraser and just kind of soften up some of these edges. There we go. Then I can add our hard shadows. And kind of keeping in mind that these are actual little folds and stuff. So we'll help accentuate that with kind of following them. Something like this. We'll mess with it as much time as it takes. Doing this. There we go. Fill this in a little bit. Oh yeah, I guess actually I need to redo this one because this little section doesn't have a whole lot of shadow on the skin, so I don't want to make it too jarring, but all of a sudden this has a bunch of shadow on it, you know? So we'll do that. And come up here. And then same idea, just add a little bit of shadows here just to help show that these little pieces are wrinkled up. So they've kind of got their own little shadows being cast. This little shadow here where this hair is laying. And then we'll add some shadows here, especially where it's super bunched up. Add a little shadow in there. And then we'll use our softening eraser and go a little bit bigger and just soften some of this. Like that. There we go. Okay. Guess it got a little too soft, so I'll undo that a little bit. We'll do this again. I don't want to make it invisible. There we go. Something like that. Okay. Then from there, that's the only thing on that layer. Now it looks like it's these little straps. So now we will, same thing, grab our shadow. Looks like it's the same material. Okay, I'm still on my eraser. And generously shade. And then we'll grab this color here, fight back this shadow, like so. Then we can go grab this here and add some wrinkles. Keeping the wrinkles relatively tame on this one though. There we go. Add a little one there and there. Then we can stretch it out a little. Then add a multiply layer. And then keeping in mind our little neck shadow here, followed by some shadow from the gold. Little tiny shadow here. And then a little one right here. Kind of wrapping around where those folds would go though. There we go. Little one here. And then looks like it's just the red and her arm. So we'll see if we can just quick get this done. So basically just doing the same thing here. Nice large shadow here. Add a little bit here. Like so. We'll shade this shade this entire thing back here. Then we'll hide that layer so we can grab our base color and then add some of that where maybe the light's catching there, as well as here on this chest area. Same with here. Then we can grab a brighter color here for our folds. Follow these little shapes here. Make some little folds here. Something like that. And then same here, just some little fold areas. Kind of fan it out. Like so. And it's got some little folds right up here, which this will all get darkened in the shadow, but we'll still add the folds with this bright color. And then do this. Same thing, kind of fanning our fold out. Like so. Add a little one up here. There we go. And we will stretch it out with our little blur tool, like so. There we go. And then do the same here. Then we will add a multiply layer. Kind of catch this area. Oops. Kind of catch this area right here where she's kind of sitting on it. Guess we can make that shadow a lot better though. There we go. And then we'll add little tiny shadows here. little shadows in here. There we go. Okay, then last thing we got to shade. Oh, I guess actually part of her arm is in this layer as well. We'll grab all this, use our paint bucket tool to save a little bit of time. Grab this here, like so. Maybe add just the tiniest bit of shadow right here. And I will take a kind of soft brush like this and just break up some of these hard lines. Just like this. I don't want to overdo that part, or this part, so just something like that, just to break things up, make it a little more interesting. Makes it a little more realistic too. And then we can soften all of this a little bit. Soften this too. And then I'll do just the tiniest little shadow like that. There we go. Okay. So now it looks like it's just this arm, which luckily it looks like it's just gonna have some dark areas with just a little tiny little places where some light catches, but nothing crazy. So we'll just do something like this. Just do the entire hand down here. We'll just do the whole thing. And then we'll fight back the shadow right here. Like so. Catch a little bit down there, but that's really it. Because then after that, we'll just use kind of a more, we'll use our airbrush here to kind of catch areas like this, so we can kind of mix some hard lines as well as some airbrush lines like this. Then all of this can just be completely shaded right here. There we go. Then kind of soften that there, soften this. And then add just a little spot where some light is really poking through. Right there. Just a little touch right there. There we go. Alright, so excuse me. I think that is all for that. Looks like it. Okay, I guess it's just the orange of the fire. We'll just get this little fire pattern out of the way real quick. So I remembered we added these in after the fact, so they are on their own little layer, so we might as well just get these out of the way. Add a little shade there, a little tiny bit there. And then we'll take a brighter color. Just right now establishing like a gradient, really. Then we'll take our actual color for the wrinkles and kind of pop them out here, like so. And then we can add a little tiny one here. Nothing crazy. Go a little bit smaller here and kind of fan out some of these wrinkles, like so. There we go. Okay, so now we will, on a multiply layer, add our hard shadow. It's not going to be too intense here. So just something like that. Kind of connect to this area here, like so. And then I will use a soft sort of airbrush here. Kind of break up that hard line a little bit. soften those. Okay. And then these little pieces we're leaving alone. So then, yeah, it looks like in the next part we should be able to just finish her up. So we'll just get everything else done. I think it won't be too terribly long, but I'd say this is a pretty good stopping spot for right now. So if you have found this video helpful, then that's great. Let me know in the comments. Just kind of a little walkthrough of what I'm doing and the things I keep in mind while I work on it. You know, it's kind of a hybrid in between just watching the process happen as well as some slight tutorial-esque parts, I would say. Just kind of walking through my process and what I do to render these things, but looking forward to it. The next part will be the last. We'll finish her in the next one, so hopefully I'll see you there.